So I see that we are live on YouTube. So good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is the 26th of February, 2021. I am your chair of the committee, Joe Benning from Caledonia County. I see that we have Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator Parent from Franklin, Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans, and Senator McCormick from Windsor has also joined us. We are going to begin this afternoon's conversation with what has been entitled Staff Updates regarding the governor's capital budget proposal. The way that our system works is the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions has the capital bill, which is our main vehicle for moving forward in committee discussion. When they are done with it, they will send it over to us, and then we'll begin to try to correct everything they screwed up. But in the meantime, we are trying to stay on top of what's going on over there. So we are hoping to hear from our own staff to talk about what kinds of things are in play, so to speak, so we can try to stay on top of what's going on. So I see Catherine Benham and Becky Wasserman are here with us. And Catherine, I have you up first. I don't know whether you had a different arrangement for how you wanted it to go forward, but by all means, if you'd like to start things, you're welcome.
Sure. Well, we don't actually have much of a plan except to fill you in, I guess, on what discussions have been and what things might be that appear to be might be changing. And one place to start would be, I don't know, Becky, should we start with the reallocations, or do you want to?
Yeah, I guess I'll just Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel, for the record. Yeah, I don't have much to add for the language part of it, but maybe the reallocations is more substantive, so it's more to talk about for now.
Okay, feel free, take it away.
Sure. So I should have identified myself. I'm Catherine Benham with the Joint Fiscal Office, and if you all remember, for those of you who are new to the capital bill, there's a whole section at the end of the money on the spreadsheet, which is reallocations, which are capital funds that were appropriated to one project and were no longer needed. The project's ended, it didn't cost as much, or the project didn't move forward. And so those funds get reallocated to the bottom line of the capital bill, and then you can spend them on a different project because that bonding has already been approved in a previous project bill. And what I was going to do is open up. And so I would say the governor had a few reallocations in his. One in particular that will be under discussion, I imagine, in both the House and the Senate is it was a project to the Department of Public Service for the VTA wireless network. It was almost $898,000, and the governor reallocated those funds, which have not been spent, to the capital bill. In the House, I know there is discussion about leaving those funds in and directing them to be used on wireless broadband issues. I don't know the details of how they're planning to spend it yet, but if that money is not reallocated, that means there's approximately $900,000 less in revenue available to spend. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So compared to the governor's spending. The other thing I would say is that the House has a subcommittee that looks at, goes through all of the old unspent funds. So in statute, any funds that are more than 2 years old can be reallocated. And the 2 years is to give capital projects time to spend their money, because things don't move as quickly, as we all know, in capital projects. What you will find is actually there's a fair amount that is not spent that is more than 2 years old, but some of it is for reasons that are you all would still want the money to stay in that project. So one prime example of this was the Roxbury Fish Hatchery, which took a long time to get built because of permitting and FEMA issues. And I think I can't remember all the details, but that was, you had allocated funds and you left those funds there because you knew you wanted to spend it. So anyway, there is a subcommittee in the House that goes through all of the talks to the agencies and departments about their old unspent money. And it appears in this process that the Department of Public Safety may have some funds that they no longer need, that are more than 2 years old. So that will be coming to you as well. So that anyway, those are additional funds that you may be able to use towards your projects. I don't know, Becky, if you have anything else to add about reallocations.
I guess the only other thing would be the broadband language that was in the bill last year. So there was language, I'm trying to think when they first, I don't know if you have this information, Catherine, there was 900,000 appropriated several years back to, it had been appropriated to the VTA, which is no longer in existence. And then a few years ago, it was reallocated to DPS for broadband expansion. It had not been used, and I think the last couple of years there was trying to figure out some explanation to whether it was actually going to be used. And there was some language in last year's capital bill that said that the General Assembly was going to look into sort of the intent of what was going to happen with that language. And so one thing that has so far happened on the House side this year is that that funding is that 900,000 is sort of being appropriated. Well, it's already appropriated to DPS, but it's being authorized to be used in another bill for broadband purposes. So I just wanted, I think that's just something to highlight, as because it was something that was in last year's language of you all looking at making sure that that money was being used appropriately. And it won't be reflected in the language in the capital bill that's going to come over to you, but there are capital funds that are kind of authorized to be used in another bill.
So I think it was in 2018 that for the FY basically 19 that the 900,000 was appropriated in the capital bill. That's when that money was. Becky's right. It goes back a long ways. For the FY 19, it was in May of 2018. You all approved a new reappropriating it in that way. And now Becky's right. There was language last year, so that will be a point of discussion, I'm sure, amongst several committees, because I know Senate Finance also talks about broadband, and appropriations will be talking about it. So the three will be just like it is in the House. It will be a multi-committee discussion on that particular item.
So should CARES dollars be offered as assistance toward getting broadband, who would be in control of that sum of money? Would it come through the capital bill or be appropriated through approps? How does that work?
Jane.
Yeah, it would be appropriations for the federal funding that would be appropriated through the legislature.
Okay. Committee questions, comments?
If I might, though, on the federal funds, there are also appear to be federal funds that are going directly to municipalities and counties, although we don't have county government. And so Becky's right. There are funds that you all will have control over appropriating, but there are also funds that are going directly to different entities. And so it will be an interesting discussion to understand money and how it's flowing, and trying to figure out how you want to leverage state funds to best get whatever priorities you have met.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around what we are authorized to spend, we get from bonding, but if a sum of money comes from the federal government, how is that channeled through? Would it even come to this committee at all?
No, it will go through the Appropriations Committee, but it's certainly, you would certainly want your money and that money to dovetail and work together to whatever priorities you set. So I think that would be another discussion for you all to follow.
Mr. Chair, just treat your seatmate very kindly.
I do whatever she tells me. I'll say again, she and Sears scare me, so I do whatever either one says.
I'm worried about you.
Senator McCormick.
Thanks. Early on, federal money coming relative to COVID had to be spent in COVID-related ways. Has that eased up at all, or
It appears
Or if
that,
it hasn't, then how do we rationalize broadband as COVID related?
well, there's two answers to that. The answer is one, yes, the restrictions seem to have eased up on the next pots of money. That being said, and also broadband is clearly it's an access issue for people who are quarantining. So if you can't access the internet or the web, you can't avail yourself of services that everybody else needs. School, you can't go to school. You can't
or work from home.
work. Yeah. So it's
And
easy.
Have the feds bought that argument?
Well, on those first funds, they had to be spent and be able to be used originally by December 30th. And that was a problem because to get something built and being used by December 30th was a problem. That deadline has since changed. And the new funds that are coming are, what I want to say, they're less restrictive in that sense, but they're set up in pots. So they are allocating a certain amount for, I don't know, schools, or they might allocate a certain amount for, I'm trying to think, Becky, infrastructure. I'm trying to think about what or public housing, how,
Right.
so rental assistance. So they've got a different kind of bounds on it in a different kind of way, if that makes sense. So there's less flexibility to move funds from rental housing over to broadband, but there's more flexibility within different than there was before. So it's a different discussion, but some of them actually have there's actually a fair amount of time maybe on some of those pots of money that we can spend. So there's not the same kind of pressing deadline. That's not true of all of them. And that's the other issue, is that different pots have different requirements and restrictions on them. So that will be a challenge.
One more question, if I may.
Yep, sure.
The issue of municipalities came up earlier. How many measures have we taken to get COVID money to municipalities? I know of one because I reported it in the Senate, but I'm not sure if there were others.
Well, I mean, if you're talking, there's new federal money coming to municipalities also. And and from the federal bill that is not yet finalized, but in the drafts that we've looked at, there's also a whole section of that bill that gives money to counties, because in many states, counties are actually important and a big part of government. Here, they're less important. So the language around that is still we're still trying to figure out how to make it work here. They've put in some language about allowing places that don't have county government to distribute it, but I don't know if that money will go to municipalities or to regional planning commissions. So there is some uncertainty on that piece.
Yeah, I mean, we do have county governments. They don't do much, but you got these little tiny could we give it to the counties and have them distribute it to the towns?
I think it depends on how it's defined in the federal bill and whether our sort of version of a county meets, because I think Vermont's counties are very different from counties in other states.
Yeah.
So it depends on how it's defined and whether they're the ones with the authority that the federal legislation is really looking to appropriate that money to.
If I might just add one more thing, the municipalities, like the Regional Planning Commission or the CUDs, are also considered municipalities. So deciding about who gets it, I mean, I think there's one piece of the federal bill that seems pretty clear that it goes to towns, but there's another piece, this county piece is a little, and I think some of those other municipalities might like to get some of that as well. So that will be an ongoing discussion.
Yeah. People like to compare Vermont government with New Hampshire government because they are so much a smaller state government per capita, but it's because they do everything at the county level. No, it's not. It's an apples and pears kind of apples and oranges comparison.
But they still don't have a sales tax.
True.
Senator Parent.
How will our towns be able to use that money? Has the feds kind of given us any input on that?
Well, that's a good question. I think they can actually, I think we should wait and see what the federal bill says.
Yeah, it's not finalized yet. So
nothing is, yeah. I would say to you though, there's been some discussion about understanding that towns may not be prepared to really be thinking about it. And so the question is, how can you help them figure out what their best options are and maybe have, some uniform forms so they know how to keep track of things, because I'm sure there'll be some auditing from the Fed. So trying to provide some assistance to the towns has certainly been one of the things I've heard being discussed.
Senator Kitchell said there would be money for the towns, and I'm sure she'll keep us all posted the minute it happens, but she thought quite a bit of money is going to go to the towns, but how, I don't know.
So all of the pots that you've talked about, Catherine, they are part and parcel of the capital bill, the pots themselves, but the money coming in here won't actually be spent by this committee. The only real impact this committee would have with respect to those funds, if I understand this correctly, is if pot A got a whole bunch of money and we were also devoting some money to pot A from our angle, that the money that we were going to devote there might be changed as a result of that money coming in from another source. Is that
That's right.
safe to say? Okay.
That's exactly right.
And I think last year's capital bill there wasn't a great impact in that sense because of the deadline to use the funds by December 30th. So in terms of capital projects, it was really challenging that something could have been completed by the end of the year. So I don't think there wasn't much to sort of swap out in terms of federal funds coming in. But now that there's these sort of pots of money and an extended deadline, it may make more of a difference.
Okay. Catherine, you made mention of one other thing, and that was that my counterpart in the House actually has subcommittees. And committee, I thought that was very interesting because I've just come off of an hour-long conversation with Representative Emmons and BGS, and was listening to how she has subcommittees from her committee go out and do X, Y, and Z to investigate things, and on occasion negotiate resolution of issues. So I was very interested. Does the Senate chair have that kind of power to send two or three committee members off to resolve things?
Senate chairs do it.
Well, I know that Senator Mazza usually resolves the final question of where the money is going to be going, but I thought, gee, what an opportunity. I could send off Senator Parent and Senator Ingalls to resolve the judicial branch's unwillingness to open up criminal trials.
There, I knew you had a method behind that. I knew you were working up to something. It's
I didn't realize that I had that kind of power, but
always working up here.
I'm going to think about that over the weekend and see what I want to do about it.
Let me know what you need done, Chair. Let me know what you need done.
Right. Catherine, are there other issues with respect to reallocation that we ought to talk about?
I think I can't think of anything else. Can you, Becky? No.
Okay. Are there other areas that you guys were planning on talking to us about today by way of updates?
The only other things I wanted to mention, just because there hasn't really been much drafting done, is just some areas where you were expecting reports back and you might want language on, like, for example, naming of state buildings and facilities. The Department of Libraries came back with a report on that, and I don't know if you've heard from them and seen their recommendations, but that could be a potential area, for example, of language that you might need. There was also some language on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail last year. There was an MOU, not that the committee wants to take up another MOU, but there was an MOU that was supposed to be done on the maintenance of that trail, and a report on whether to make it a linear state park. So those things are, depending on how the committee wants to deal with it, could be areas where you might need some language to address those.
Okay, so I did hear from Commissioner Fitch that the MOU that we had been talking about is working through very nicely. She appreciated being able to reach out to you, Beck, as I understand it, to help in that process. So I'm very happy to see that particular issue getting resolved of its own accord. Beyond that, Senator McCormick.
What is the institution committee's role in naming buildings?
Be
Uh,
careful. Be careful.
Yeah, so I'll say that statutorily, the General Assembly in Title 29 has the authority to name state buildings and facilities. The Department of Libraries has authority over like geographic locations to name those. It's come up, I think this issue has come up in the past few years in terms of not really having a policy in place about who gets a building named after them. And there have also been requests for naming things like rooms or something, or something that not as big as a building, but conference room, for example. So I think the motivation for the report last year was to try to figure out, should the General Assembly be the ones who are authorized to do this? And if so, should there be a policy in place about how you figure out how to name a building after somebody?
Before I go any further with this, I want to remind the Republican members of this committee that there's already a Governor Aiken Avenue and a Governor Davis Avenue. I'm being contacted by constituents.
Yeah,
who
they all,
want-
that's very dangerous. Vince Aluzzi was, and others were, thank God the libraries used to do it at one time, but that can be very dangerous. So last year, didn't we do a bridge somewhere? And up in,
Yeah, Kerm Smith.
Yeah, Kerm Smith. And that was a touchy subject right there. If you open that door, let me tell you, you've got troubles.
Well, I'm going to at least open it a crack here, maybe shut it quickly.
Well, we'll
But
shut it
I'm
quickly.
being contacted by people who think we ought to name the building to the right of the State House, as you're looking out from the State House, should be named after Governor Hoff.
Yeah, we've got that calls. And, like
We
I said,
had that conversation was had.
right,
It only got to the building because first they wanted to name the street
right.
after Governor Hoff, and then somebody poo-pooed that idea. So then it went to the building. And I'm not sure where that conversation is right now, but in my eyes, the number one rule should be the person is dead. And-
Well,
Well, no, but that,
we got that covered.
Yep.
no, I would just like to comment when I get a minute.
Sure, go ahead.
No, I just, you got to be very, I can't stress enough the importance of this is a serious issue, because you would have a list a mile long. I got approached on Governor Hoff. I think it was Doug Racine, and I'm not very popular because I said, once we start opening that, you're going to have a list. Every legislator will have a list that you won't believe of who they want named throughout the state. And I've always said, let's keep it out of the legislature as best you can. Don't let the legislature handle it. Let some committee, like and this chair just said, you must be passed away or deceased. But you got to be very, very careful about this one. This one here you wouldn't believe the amount of controversy this would cause if you open that door. I think, Catherine, you were around long enough to understand some of these issues that happen.
Yes, it is never a simple conversation.
No, it's very difficult. So I just caution everybody not to let the legislature open that up, because boy, let me tell you.
I'm glad you asked that question, Dick, because it reminded me of last night's Judicial Retention Committee, which is chaired by Representative Joseph Troiano, also known as Chip Troiano. And he went around the screen introducing everybody, and he kept calling Senator McCormick Senator McConnell.
They do act alike, yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. And
Yeah.
it took him 2 or 3 times before he realized he was actually making that mistake. But it was probably the only funny thing about Retention Committee last night.
So he didn't do it to be funny. He just did
No,
it.
He just kept
He
calling.
forgot my name.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, Senator Mazza, I think you're holding back, and I can tell you're being very shy about this, but
Yeah, right.
I think I can read between the lines that you don't like the idea.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just a dangerous road to have legislators do it, because it's gonna, oh my God, we all can name 20 people that would call us tomorrow morning to have someone name on some building or some street or something. And
I do think, I'm not gonna take up time, or I do think that Governor Hoff, we can make a stronger case that he's sort of in a class by himself. But
why
he's
not?
not-
Why
wasn't
not
just
governors?
anybody.
Why not other governors?
Yeah, what makes him
Well,
better
because
than
they
DA?
weren't the first after 100 years of one party controlling the state.
Oh, now
They
you're
were-
now you're
Oh,
taking,
now
now
it's
you're taking party.
politics.
Now you're taking
Yeah,
party.
that's
You're-
partisan.
History.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
history.
Talk about partisan. Now you're taking a Democrat versus a Republican.
Well, as I say, we've
Yeah,
already
that-
got.
To me,
we've
because you're
got
the
Then it'll
first.
be Catholic versus Protestant. Then it'll be, oh my God.
We've got Aiken and Davis, and I support both of those. I think that was wonderful. I think Aiken and Davis both rise above party. I own Davis and.
But I don't think
and
Hoff
Aiken.
does.
Well,
The average Vermonter doesn't know who Phil Hoff is. I mean, in all honesty.
There you go.
maybe they should, and that would help. In any case, I don't know. I don't think I'm doing so great here on this. I'm gonna.
Well, you
Back
might have picked up on the fact we've had this conversation once before.
Yeah,
Before
yeah.
we were-
Sometimes it's just a great idea to find that mute button.
Oh, that's right. It was Howard Dean. It was Howard Dean that called you a name, McCormick. That's right. I forgot that.
A pompous ass. You call me
Yeah,
a pompous
yeah,
ass. No, that wasn't hot.
It was Howard Dean.
So for whatever it's worth, I met all summer long with the Joint Legislative Management Committee. And I kept signing on my name as Senator Joe Biden. It took a while before anybody actually figured out what was going on there. And naming anything brings up a firestorm of conversation that you just can't anticipate.
I'll say it like a politician. I know Joe Biden and you know Joe Biden. Okay.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment. I want to say it is,
I don't
but
know. It just sounded good for the time.
Well, at least you can remember your name, huh?
yeah, I do.
Senator Benning.
They named a county after me here in Vermont, so I'm pretty good. Catherine, Beck, anything else you wanted to talk about? What kind of inside dirt can you give us on the House committee, and what are they trying to do to the Capitol bill?
I think they're actually starting markup as we speak. So
Uh-oh.
I don't know that there's much dirt yet.
They're not
Right.
updated anyway.
Wait. If they're starting markup as we speak, what are you guys doing here?
We told them we were scheduled already.
You're probably missing a good conversation. And I mean that sarcastically.
Actually, one other thing, Becky, we could mention is school construction.
Yeah, that was actually something that I was gonna raise.
Why don't you?
So in House Education, which the House Institutions Committee is had a chance to comment on the bill, but House Education is working on a committee bill right now about doing a facilities condition analysis of all the schools around the state, with the sort of plan in the future, figuring out how to fund school construction. And for those committee members that are not aware of this, that the school construction aid program was something that was funded out of Capitol bill, but there's been a moratorium on that program since 2007. And the legislature committed to paying back all the funds that were committed for state aid over a number of years, and finally paid back all that aid through the Capitol bill in 2016. But since then, there hasn't been, a plan in place for how to deal with school construction. And so there's still this moratorium. So they're working on this bill to figure out what schools need, what standards should be in place for schools. And then there's also a funding report in there at the moment about how to figure out sort of future ways that the state can fund school construction. So I definitely think, depending on how that moves, that's something that could end up in your committee or be a discussion that your committee would be having. And related, there was also a provision in that section of law that allowed this program, that was part of this program, that said if a school received aid under this program and then they sell their building, they had to pay back a certain percentage to the state based on the aid that they received. There's been like a sunset on that for the past few years in the capital bill that kind of has been moved forward by the committee a few times. So that's something else that the committee might be looking at, is whether or not to still allow schools to sell buildings without having to pay anything back to the capital bill. Because I think another part of this conversation is sort of repurposing school buildings that are not being used any longer. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Catherine?
I think you captured it.
Any questions, guys?
Didn't Act 60 change all of that though? I mean, when I was on the my select board of Irisburg, since I've since moved, but didn't we? Don't I remember signing over the our school for $1? I mean, we didn't even own our school. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what that we had taken the act to court and we lost because we didn't actually physically own our school. So I don't know how we would sell it anyways.
So there has been language in previous capital bills to allow for schools, like on a case-by-case basis, to do exactly what you said. So language that allows for that to happen. I think another challenge, though, is that I don't know who's keeping track of it. So, if somebody did receive aid a long time ago, there's not really anyone, like, for example, at AOE that is keeping track of if they received aid and then did that example of what you mentioned of selling a building for $1 to the town or something like that. So I think it's a lack of information and sort of following this issue, as well as the fact that there's no real process in place. And I think with the school mergers, the idea was that you don't want to penalize schools that are merging into one building and then have to get rid of another building. So they allowed for this sort of pause on this requirement that you had to pay back the state for a while. And I think the question is, how long are they going to continuing allowing schools to not have to pay the state back?
Did I answer your question, or are you now more confused?
No, I did. No, I just trying to, I want to, yeah. I need to be more sure with what I'm thinking I remember versus what's there. So
I know that I mean, the last 8 years that I've been here, I think on a couple of occasions I've drafted language to allow a town to allow a school district to sell to the town, for example, a school building for $1. So I know that that's happened.
Well, and we went the other way. I mean, we were mandated, we had to sell our town had to sell our building to the school district for $1. And that's where our big rub came in, that not to get too in depth with that, but I can remember the angst of it was, even when I was a child, about could we even afford the school, and we did real well. We paid the school off and ahead of time, and then at the end, Act 60 mandated that we sold it for $1 to the school district, taking our biggest asset in town that we owned. So I don't want to get too far off subject with that. So I know what you're saying versus what I'm bringing up. So I'm good.
Anything else you folks would like to tell us while you're here?
I think stay tuned and we'll see what happens in the House committee. I think I think the week after town meeting is when the committee will really get down to putting the pen to paper, or having Becky and me put pen to paper.
So I was told on my previous Zoom conference today that the Money Committee crossover date of March 19th does not apply to the capital bill. Is that true?
I don't know.
I'd never heard of that before. I made very clear to Alice I wanted the bill long before April 1st, if that is the case, but
so that means that suggesting that there's no crossover deadline for the capital bill, or
according to what she was claiming, the approps bill and the capital bill are not subject to the March 19th deadline. she was aware of the March 12th crossover, the normal crossover date for all other bills, but was telling me that the Money Committee's crossover date does not apply to either the big bill or the capital bill.
That
was
was
the
the
first-
first bill, told them.
I'd never heard that before, and I'm a little concerned if that is the
I'll
case.
just check with Becca, because we had a rules committee meeting a week or so ago, so.
Uh-oh.
I can't speak to the rules and the dates. I
Yeah.
don't want to do that, but I do think there's 3 weeks when you get back in March, 3 weeks for the legislature. So I don't know what the dates are when the bill's gone from the House to the Senate, but I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. We could go look at that up, I suppose, but
Well, the last that I'd heard was March 12th was for normal bills, and
That
the
one-
Money Committee bills would be on the 19th. But then Alice was trying to tell me that the 19th doesn't apply to the capital bill.
well, I think there have
Check with
certainly
John.
been times when they haven't.
Just check
I
with.
think it's always been a challenge because it's at the same time as the budget. So it usually goes to appropriations like right after the budget is voted out. But I can definitely see what the Rules Committee said. I know that was about a week ago that
Yeah.
those dates were set.
I just want to make sure we have enough time to deal with the bill.
You'll have plenty of time.
Okay.
Wait, we're not going to July this year?
Oh, please, no.
I don't know
We
that I
have to
want to
be-
go
we have
down
to
this road.
consider Ingalls boat in July.
Well, I know. Well, we'll all have committee meetings on my boat, or,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah.
You got Wi-Fi access on that?
I
baby?
do. Yeah, you have to use my,
I
you can
gotta
use
bring
my
all the-
hotspot.
I gotta bring the steak and all the refreshments, so.
No, you just bring the pie. I got the steak.
I'll bring my guitar.
There you go. There you go.
Uh-oh.
I was going to volunteer to bring mine, but I'd probably ride my motorcycle up.
You
there.
just bring your helmet, Joe.
Yeah, right.
Your chair.
Oh.
You have to. It's required.
Joe, I'll bring an auto harp also, so you bring me.
Oh, there you go.
Harp for you.
All
We'll do
right.
duets.
Catherine, Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I see Mike Covey is here, and that's a good sign.
Neat.
Mike, you are here. And by the way, ladies, have a great week
Yeah.
off.
Yes. You too. And we'll see you in a
you.
week. Yeah.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
too.
Senator Benning, I did email, thanks to Mike Covey, Cubby Smith, and I haven't heard from him to send him the link for the Zoom meeting, so I hope
He
he
was having
got it.
problems last week.
He was. Mike, do you know anything about that?
I do. Denise sent it to us this morning, so Cubby has it, and I was texting with him 10, 15 minutes ago. He should be on.
Okay, great.
So she sent the link.
I
to
know.
us and not the committee.
And not the committee. Okay. Well,
I should have said earlier, and since we are on YouTube, that Denise is our normal committee assistant. She did have a medical problem. Something got into her eye, and she had to leave in a hurry to get to the doctors. So hoping that she's well, and we're kind of laughing because in the process of leaving quickly, some of us didn't get the links to be on this afternoon's conversation, and some of us did.
I'll take care of you guys in the future.
That was totally shocking to get finally signed on and see you already sitting there.
we know who her favorite is now.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I discovered, a little self-discovery, which is that I realized I didn't have the numbers, is I did not get that alarmed, oh my God, I'm missing the meeting feeling. I was like, all right, well, something went wrong. Let me get in touch.
Well, I think Russ and I figured out that it's not the same link numbers. The ID numbers are different every time that she sets up a meeting.
No,
So, Mike, can you bring us up to speed on what's going on with Cubby? You're still muted, Mike.
Yes, insofar as this connection or insofar as the Walleye Association?
Well, he's actually now connected, I see. So, Cubby, welcome.
Hey, Senator Benning, how you doing?
Very good.
You're losing $1,000 every time you don't come on. So
This has not been easier. It's easier raising fish, believe me.
So let me give you guys some background here. This afternoon, 4 of us have to get off by 2:30 at the latest. I don't necessarily know that you guys ever talked that long, but we wanted to have you guys on as the last item up for a Friday afternoon because we all needed some healthy humor. And we're going to open it up to you fellas to do your best to give us some of that good humor. So who wants to take charge of the conversation?
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to President Bob Sampson, okay?
Okay.
And here we go. I'm going to switch seats with you, Bobby.
And Bob, let me, I hope you can hear me as you're switching seats. Just so you know, this YouTube experience means we potentially have audience out there. And they don't necessarily know who you guys are. And we also have 3 new committee members, one of whom is a brand new legislator. So what we try to do is get everybody who's come on to give us a good biographical sketch of themselves, as well as how they fit into the picture, in case we can make good connections and joke about whatever your past history is. So Bob, welcome. And let us know a little bit about you and then how you fit into this picture.
Okay, I'll go back. Our organization is probably 24 years old, but about 14 years ago, we decided something had to be done with the walleye. We were losing the walleye in Lake Champlain. There was very little natural reproduction. And so we formed the group, the Walleye Association, and we started out, we would have the state, we lobbied the state to go out and catch walleye and spawn them out. And when they were hatched, they're only about a 1/4 inch long. And we were stocking in the millions. We actually had a goal back then of 12 million eggs hatched and put in the lake. Well, that we found out real quick that there was very little return on those fry. A fry is a 1/4 of an inch long fish. So we decided we got to do something different. We decided on ponds. We built ponds. We have 5 ponds, and we started raising them, marking them, stocking them, and we started seeing the effect. We were getting more fish that were coming back, and we were pretty excited about it. A lot of work with the ponds, a tremendous amount of work. And Kevin Kelsey at the hatchery and Ed Weed, he wanted to experiment to raise them in captivity, which is intensive culture. Nobody, no state, we were really not for it, but no state had any luck raising walleyes to fingerling size. Well, I think that's all Kevin needed. He was bound and determined he was going to raise them. So I'm going to say, to make it short, 4 years, probably we've been into it 4 years with intensive culture. Kevin, the last 2 years, has figured out how to raise them in captivity. He is the only person who has been able to do this. And a lot of it has to do with feed. Our feed is coming from Japan. Japan really knows how to raise fish. And we're following kind of their guidelines on feed. These fish are growing. We're growing fingerlings, which are 2 inches long, in a month. compared to the ponds, we're raising them 1.5 inches, but it's taking us almost 6 to 8 weeks. So the last 2 years, Kevin has had tremendous success, but there's a lot of things that needed to be done to make it better. And last year, we put $80,000 of our money into intensive culture. We have these self-cleaning tanks. We were replacing the tanks. We're self-cleaning tanks, and we're darkening the room. The feed is different, and it's just a unbelievable success. The fish are showing up. We had one concern, and that concern was the quality. Is the quality of fish better than the ponds that come out of intensive culture? That was an unknown for us, because intensive culture, the fish were used to having that feed put right in front of them all the time. And so and the pond fish, that we grew plankton, and they would have to hunt for it. So we thought that these fish might not show up as good, but that hasn't been the case. We have 1 year really a good data on the intensive culture fish, and they are showing up in great numbers. And we're just totally excited about it. And the way intensive culture is working, the fish are showing up. There's been a unbelievable increase in catch rates. The good walleye fishermen, I just talked to one the other day who was fishing out on the ice, and he's so excited. He says, we're catching so many small fish. 10 years ago, you couldn't catch a juvenile fish. Now it's just loaded with them. So that brings us to where we are now. We put all we could afford. We put in intensive culture last year with self-cleaning tanks, a tremendous amount of labor. There's a tremendous amount of labor in raising walleyes. They're ferocious when they're an adult, but when they're 1/4 inch long, one little mistake, you can lose them all. And we have been so lucky. We've worked hard at it. It's worked. It works. We know it works. We can raise fish faster, quicker, bigger, in a lot less time. So our emphasis at this point in time is on intensive culture. We put all we could into the tanks, the self-cleaning tanks, and all the other things. We darken the room. We've done a lot of things out there, but we're not done. We've got to put in some self-cleaning tanks, and the rest of we're half done. So we really got to do another half. And I'll give you those figures that we're looking for. What happened to us is just what happened to a lot of people. Right when we were just going to have our banquet, within a week, we had to call it off because of COVID. And it's hurt us like it has a lot of people. Our banquet was scheduled just about a week into where we were calling things off. And so we had to call off the banquet. We're sitting on probably $15,000 worth of merchandise. We're sitting on tickets that were sold for the banquet, and the people have been really good and saying, if you're going to have the banquet someday, we'll wait. And so we're hoping that maybe within a year that we can have our banquet. It's a major fundraiser. It made us short on our general fund. But the good thing, we haven't missed a beat as far as raising fish and putting them in the lake. Because we have 5 rivers that we're stocking. Plus, we have the inland program, which is stocking some lakes and ponds like not Norton Pond, Island Pond and Chittenden Reservoir and Little Salem, Big Salem. And all of these is just working. License sales are up 30%. And those are the good things. This has really hurt us as far as being able to communicate because we don't all have computers, and but we've managed to get by, and I hope things are looking a little bright. But it's made us have to tuck in, and we want to do the rest. It'll pretty much take care of the things we want to do intensive culture. The plus side of this is, yes, a lot of our monies have gone in, not to the ponds, has gone into this intensive culture. The state, the state is reaping the benefits of this, of the grants, because without them, we'd be treading water. There's no two ways about it. The grants you guys have given us has made this whole program possible. We've been really careful with our money. We can do things and improve things at a lot lower cost than you people can do. And so we're hanging in there and trying to get through this COVID thing, but we really aren't missing a beat. Perks Pond is going to be operating this year, and depending on what we have for fish, we're going to go from there. And my request, or I should say our request, is we would like to pretty much finish up the work in the hatchery to raise more fish. We would like 4 self-cleaning tanks. They're shipped to us. They're $38,000 for the 4. A drum filter is $10,000. We got caught last year when we ordered all this stuff, and we had an override of $12,000, and that was because we had to put a drum filter in at Bald Hill and Newfane. We did that to meet the requirements of EPA, and we need a drum filter at the Edweed and 16 feeders for $10,000. It's a total of $68,000. Whatever we get, it's going to take us 2 years to complete that, and because of money, and because we've got to get through a banquet before we can really put a lot of money into the intensive culture. But other than that, we haven't missed a beat. That's where we've worked hard at this. You people have made it possible. There's just no two ways about it. Without the help, we'd be going, but we'd be behind. And we appreciate everything you've done for us. This is
what can I ask what the I'm at home right now and I don't have the capital bill in front of me. Can I ask what the governor's recommend was for you folks? Do you know?
No, I don't.
You mean
Okay.
last year, we were getting a 2-year
Right,
appropriation
Right.
and it was totaled 50,000.
right.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember what the governor's recommend was for this next 2-year stretch.
No, I haven't heard. I haven't, and I would have. I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
What would it be under, Chair? I can look it up. I've got my,
That's a good question. I don't know. Normally I look right down the columns and I see it, but I don't have that in
Mhm.
front of me.
If this will help, I know the grant is a pass-through grant and it passes through Fish and Wildlife,
Right,
if that's helpful.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Senator Mazza had a question.
What, seeing you do so much, and we know you do a lot because it wouldn't be possible, what does the state share of it? For example, you're required to put all these tanks and everything. Doesn't the state want to do some of this also to increase the population of the walleye? What's our role as a state?
I can't tell you that. I know that,
I can mention that Senator Mazzalake, we're a partner, so to speak. So we do, one thing we provide is labor. We're a volunteer outfit. And I think that's the most important contribution, that and being able to raise money.
But you say you've got to buy tanks and you've got to buy filters. That's equipment into our hatcheries, right?
Yes.
yes.
So why doesn't the state buy the equipment and you donate everything else?
I think to answer that, I think they put in for an appropriations
They-
and got refused.
They
So
did
We're
put
stepping
in,
up.
they put in for monies to do that, and
That's Mike Snyder's or
and it was turned down, and I mean, I don't want to make this sound bad, but what really happens, the real truth is, if we don't, is we've made sure that we've made the improvements and we've done what it takes to restore the walleye fishery. We've done whatever we can. We've spent a lot of our monies doing it. And what happens with a lot of programs, and I know you know this, is you get started and you get headed in the right direction, and administration changes, people change, and these programs get shut down. We have worked really hard and been really responsible to see that these monies go where they should go. And I can't think of a better place to put my money than in intensive culture at this point, because
but we raise fish, all other kinds of fish at the hatchery. Why isn't there put a big emphasis on walleyes, or why aren't they would they not raise them if it wasn't for you guys?
I don't know.
I'm just concerned about if the state's role,
Yeah.
because it helps the whole state economy. It's not
It-
just your deal. You're not the only one that catches walleye. It's
Hey, and
everyone.
what happens when these guys don't want to do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So-
Do we abolish the program? There's no more.
Yeah, I mean, what happens then?
Okay, what
and-
you said is we talk about this a lot.
Okay. All
I
right.
mean, I'm getting a lot older. It's getting hard. Cubby's getting older.
Yeah, because it doesn't benefit just you. It benefits
Right.
everyone fishing. It's
That's
not-
what I'm trying to say is
Yeah.
what we by putting our money into the intensive culture, and we're lobbying to
right.
to
Help
get
the-
that,
help
to
the whole
put that
economy.
money to help the walleye, because
Right.
we are about walleye. We like to fish, but we're all about walleye.
But it's not just you guys. It's everybody.
Right. So what happens when these guys don't want to do it anymore? I mean,
Well,
that's the problem, you know?
This is we talk about this all the time, because this is why the intensive culture is so important, that they get what they need to raise walleyes. Because if something happened, and we get older, and I don't see us dissolving it, but I don't see us doing the ponds the way we always did.
Right.
Uh,
Whole new world out there. Yeah.
Right. And Chair, the, all I can find on the capital bill is hatchery improvements for 1.583 million.
Okay,
Right.
so you're in there somewhere.
Right, and that was part of it, but priorities, it's priorities.
Right.
You know, I
Alright.
think,
So-
Senator Benning, to answer, I think I know where Senator Mazza was going, that
If you do, Cubby, that's a new one on us, because I've never known where he was going.
okay, but you know, I want you to
Wherever he's going, he's driving a Corvette. That's all we know.
Yeah, that's right. And tell him that our ice auger's still up for a raffle too.
Yeah, that's right. You gotta buy tickets for Christ's sake. You never let me win it. But, they sell all these tickets, but they keep the same auger every year.
I was going to tell him if they're sitting on all kinds of merchandise because they didn't have their dinner.
I know, and
There's a retail store on Lake Champlain up in Colchester. You might want to talk to that guy.
I say very simply, if you guys like it's 68,000, what they should be putting in 34,000 and
Absolutely.
or something like a match, because it's the economy. It's helping everyone. I may look at this differently, but it isn't helping just you and you and you. It's helping everyone who fishes walleye. And we raise, that's our job at the hatchery, is to raise fish to put into Lake Champlain, all of the lakes. So the economy, all these people fish from all over the country and they help the economy of Vermont. So I would say, okay, we're going to raise 34,000 and you come up with 34,000 and get the job done.
Well, we're going to have Commissioner Snyder back in. And,
okay, good.
He's the guy who controls all the bucks. We need to remind him that we're the first state to ban slavery in a constitution, and we're the first state to raise walleye in-house.
Right.
We need to make this a better priority.
Well, it is scary. I mean, if this program is obviously successful, and if there's no succession plan to when it's no longer here, I mean, there needs to be a plan. It really does.
Well,
they gotta put their mouth where their money where their mouth is too. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We can't do it just
but I'm looking at Mike Covey, who's probably 30 years younger than these two guys here, and he's probably thinking, wait, what about me? I'm in it too. Sure, Mike, I need to kind of sort of just remind everybody first that 4 of us are due at 2:30 on a different call, but I want to make sure everybody gets in. So
how come not 5 of us? What's the call?
You have a former pro tem. I'm not supposed to be talking about that live on air, but you know what it is.
Okay.
Cubby, I don't know whether you wanted to say anything first before we turn from your camera over to Mike Covey.
I just wanted, back, I don't want to make this too long either, but at the time it was like a perfect storm. A lot of emphasis was putting on restoring trout and salmon, the salmonite program. And it really was the walleye program was just, don't want to be negative about it, but it was kind of like neglected. And we talking about a walleye plan, we demanded, if you will, that they come up with that Fish and Wildlife come up with a stocking plan back then. And that's how this got started. But the only matching, we're trying to match the help you've been giving us, and God, we really appreciate your help. You've been a big part of what we do. I'll tell you,
Well, I can tell you point blank right now that we really appreciate what you guys do, because that is a fishery that has been dwindling for a long, long time. And to hear the success that you're having, I used to go walleye fishing every year up in further north of Canada, and they're an awful fun fish to catch. And the thought that we can catch them 2 miles from my house right here on Salem, and then a little further up in Island Pond is very exciting to me. So, yes.
Well, no, without these guys, you wouldn't have this program. That's why I'm saying I don't think we're doing our part, because they do so much. In other words, I'm trying to figure this all out, but every year I try to figure it out.
Well, so Mike Covey, what do you think? Is there a younger generation coming up to take over the reins, or what?
I think so. I hope so. You know how us kids are. It takes us a while to figure things out and figure out the need for that kind of an effort. I do appreciate the compliment. I might be 30 years younger than them, but I'm amazingly well preserved. I did want to note that I think for starters, I'll say the commissioner could join us if you would like that. If Jude sends him a link, he's able to join us real quickly. The second thing I would like to note for Senator Mazza is that I believe the 68,000 that Cubby and Bob are talking about, 50,000 of that would be this allocation of 25,000 over 2 years. So the state is contributing quite a bit, and Walleye Association has been picking up the.
Well, I just want to make sure that the state's doing their part. It's at their hatchery. It's not in somebody's garage. It's in their hatchery. It's an asset of their facility, I would think. It's in my district too. I think it's, I don't know.
So Jude, yes to the commissioner. Hopefully you got that message.
And I would just
I
leave it.
did. I'm sending it now.
Thank you. We always love to have the commissioner in on Friday
We gotta
afternoon.
harass him. He's a good guy. We have to harass him a little bit. I want to harass him a little bit, have a little fun.
Did you guys get him a walleye hat? That might push something along here.
We got the commissioner in New Hampshire a hat too.
Oh. Does Commissioner Schneider know that?
I don't know.
That would be Commissioner Ford.
Get Bernie Sanders one. You get national attention.
And while we're at it, I want to buy one of those hats. So let me know where we can buy them.
Maz's General Store.
Bring them in. I'll sell them. Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I think you ought to Photoshop that picture of Bernie Sanders during Biden's
that's right.
inauguration and put a walleye hat on.
There you go. Damn it. There we go.
You know, they had of course, we've been on this stocking program for like 14 years, and they had a fishing derby this weekend. They call it the Island Derby. It was kind of crude, I guess, the way they did it because they had no award ceremony. But they're paid for 5 places, and you had to have, I guess there was 1 9-pound fish, and the other 4 were 10 pounds.
That's unbelievable. What were the inches of that? Do you know how big a 9 or 10 pounder was? And I'm trying to compare them to what we catch up north.
I put lead sinkers in them.
Yeah, well, you know, they're
30 inches, 30.
Believe it
30,
or not,
yeah.
every river is different. Our river, we'll call it our river. I call
Senator
it my
Benning,
river.
Commissioner Porter is on the call.
I see that. And I also see he doesn't have a hat on his head. We should tell you, Louis, that we've been joking about the fact that the commissioner may not have a walleye hat yet, and that's why he's not giving more money to these guys.
All we want to know, Commissioner, is that we're not going to threaten you, but unless you do better for these guys, your budget's going to be cut what they need.
We'd actually be happy with that because I think they use it more efficiently than we do. But I've been eavesdropping on you on YouTube. And we put a lot into walleye rearing. The reason this kind of strange hybrid program has evolved is we many years ago, the Walleye Association and we came together and they asked us to do more on walleye rearing, and we said, well, let's do it as a partnership. And they started rearing walleyes in ponds, and we would help them get those little tiny walleye ready for the ponds and then help them stock them out. As these guys working with Kevin Kelsey in our hatchery have advanced the process of walleye rearing, we've come, I think both the association and the department have come to realize that we can raise them more efficiently in these tanks inside the hatchery. So it's a little bit of a strange partnership, but I think a good partnership in that they put what had been going to their private ponds into equipment that the association owns, but is operated within our confines of our hatchery. So we spend about $3 million a year in operating on hatcheries, give or take. $1.5 million in a typical capital bill for hatcheries. Obviously, that's split among a bunch of species, but a share of that goes to the walleye program. We definitely put much more than 60,000 or 50,000 into walleye rearing. It's just that this partnership has proven very successful, and we want to adapt to make it as efficient as possible, even if that means what's kind of a weird arrangement where we're operating with a partner within the confines of the hatchery. More importantly, to Senator Ingalls' point about succession, this is something that the Walleye Association thinks a lot about. It's something we think a lot about, and we are hopeful that there'll be another generation of Walleye Association members to continue this partnership. And I don't think this will be the case for a lot of, but if it were to pass that did not happen, we would certainly continue walleye rearing within the state hatcheries. No question about that. This partnership has pushed us to do more on walleye. That's a good thing. It's something that's proven to be extremely successful in the ponds that we do stock, and including Lake Champlain. But I just wanted to jump in and explain a little bit of the kind of strange dynamic that's led to this hybrid approach, where it's capital money allocated separately from the capital money that goes to the department, but ends up buying equipment that we use within the hatchery. And I know it's a little weird, but I promise you it does work. And I think these guys will agree that it works.
Well, I think proof's in the pudding that it works, and it's a success story.
So let me apologize. I was referring to Commissioner Schneider before. For some reason or other, I had the wrong commissioner in my head.
Hey, if you want to take it out of Commissioner Snyder's budget and put it into our association, that's fine with me.
Yeah, that definitely might require a walleye hat for him, though. That,
Wait, my phone's ringing.
I'm sorry that we can't continue this conversation, because it's always fun to see you guys come in. And 4 of us, as I said earlier, have to get off and be on a different Zoom matter this afternoon. But we will see what we can do about trying to maintain what the governor had originally recommended, and make sure you get the money that you're well deserving of as we listen to these conversations. And Commissioner, I had no idea that we were first in the nation to make this successfully work in-house. There is a Vermont first list out there somewhere, amongst other things, that we were the first to outlaw slavery in our Constitution. This probably ought to be on that list whenever you get around to looking at it.
And
So,
I was
Sounds
starting
good.
to think.
And Bob and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
go ahead. Sam.
No, go ahead. You go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say, Bob and Cubby are exactly right. The best way to get something done is to tell Kevin Kelsey he can't do it.
Sounds like he's a good man.
Yeah. I'm wondering why they never bring him to these conversations, though. That's got me
Right,
scratching.
we gotta meet that gentleman.
We should.
I started to think that the walleye guys were you were going to have better luck seeing Sasquatch before we saw them, but they didn't disappoint. I was pretty happy to see him here today.
Yeah, it's a good thing you guys learned how to use Zoom.
Bob failed to mention that, too, talking about finances, we had to buy a camera and a microphone to make this possible.
Ooh. There ought to be some legislative money for that somewhere.
I think the chair of the committee ought to have a collection going here.
You know how I feel about this computer, this Zoom, and all this other stuff. I feel like you guys sent me up to Mars and dropped me off and left me alone.
I'm in your same boat with you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think all 3 of you are riding in Senator Mazda's Corvette.
Yeah, right. I'm just figuring out how my rotary phone works.
Well, I appreciate. Cub and I both appreciate. We look forward to coming to see you guys, and
Always fun.
Yeah,
Please let
it
us
is.
know where we can buy one of those hats. I want to buy one of those hats.
no,
We'll get you a hat.
Yeah, we'll
believe
get
me.
the hat.
We'll
I think
make sure
we've got. I think probably Mr. Mazza probably has some hats, because I believe we've given
You
him a
dropped
hat,
them, yeah.
but he
I got
wants
it-
an
I got it
auger.
here. Oh, yeah, I got one in my garage in my collection there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that only means that we're sending Russ off to have to go to Mazda's store, and that's a fate worse than death, Russ.
Well, that's, yeah. If I buy it for 10, I'm gonna get 20. So.
That's right.
Well, that's cheaper than I thought it was gonna be.
All right, Bob,
Thank
Cubby,
you.
Mike,
Thanks, guys.
and Commissioner Porter, thank you all very much for
Thank
joining.
you all.
You made our Friday.
Yeah, I wish
We're gonna
every
go
Friday
off-
was like this. This is great.
Yeah,
All
Jude, we're gonna
right.
go off YouTube if you would. And